Friday, October 14th. I'm your host, Ryan McClincy. Today, we're going to do a little bit of a different show. I know typically it's myself and one of the founders or one of the insiders here doing an interview. Being the bye week, we've talked ad nauseum this week about a lot of our grades for this team so far in the season, where we see this team headed, what we kind of see as abilities to work on, or facets that need to be worked on or improved upon going into the second half of the season, and just kind of like how that happens during a bye week. Some of the recruiting news, obviously, but I didn't really want to talk about more of that on Friday. What I did want to talk about is this is the probably the biggest weekend in college football to date. There's a number of top matchups that I, for one, will be watching, and I'm sure the rest of college football will be watching. I know the coaching staff there at Ohio State has the weekend off, obviously, Saturday being the only day off during the season that they have. So I know they'll be watching, looking for you know any insight that they can gather from these teams that we're either going to face later on this year or could potentially face in a college football playoff. So that being said, I wanted to take a look at some of the top matchups this weekend, give my thoughts as to the games themselves, share some of the numbers that you see here with these matchups, and give my predictions on and the outcomes when it comes to betting favorites and who I think will ultimately probably win the games, but more so where I would be placing my money. So without further ado, let's start with the most obvious game this weekend here: Penn State versus that team up north. Looking at the numbers, Michigan definitely has the advantage in offense, defense, from a total standpoint as well as scoring standpoint. But that strength of schedule number probably plays a pretty big factor into it. 112th ranked strength of schedule to start this season. It's just embarrassing. Penn State definitely has the leg up there. They've played tougher competition. We saw what they were able to do against Auburn at Auburn, to say the least, and it was pretty impressive. So it definitely made me think a little bit differently about this Penn State team. I think this game is going to be pretty close all the way through. I think it's going to be a one-score game, largely, for the most part. I don't really see either team being able to pull away effectively to double digits or anything. I think the main difference maker here will be in the fourth quarter at home. Michigan's defense, I think they'll be able to get the stops that they need. So I do think Michigan will ultimately pull this game out, but I think it's going to be close, and I will gladly take Penn State plus the points because I also think that they could come out with a victory. So take the points plus 6.5. It's a decent number. I will gladly accept that all day long. Next game, Alabama UT, probably the biggest matchup of the weekend, just from a if you're looking at it from ability standpoint as well as just rankings standpoint and impact for the college football playoff. You have your strength schedule obviously in favor of UT, total offense in favor of UT, both from a total and a scoring. You have the second ranked scoring offense there. Excuse me. Defense is going to be the bigger impact here, where you have Alabama with the far and away better defense. Granted, against a little bit lesser competition, they haven't looked great on the whole. Especially these last 2 weeks, just barely escaping with a win against Texas A&M at home. So, are they beatable? Yes, I think this is probably the most beatable Alabama team that I can remember in recent history, and UT is playing at a pace that I haven't seen, in recent history, or at least remember. I think they started undefeated for the first four games, maybe in the teens, but outside of that, it's been 1998. It's been Peyton Manning or bust. So UT has been playing a lot better. I definitely think Hendon Hooker in that group is going to be able to score somewhat with Bama. I think the biggest impact, that's going to come out of this game, or that's going to determine this game, is whether or not Bryce Young can play. If you have a young quarterback going into what is going to be a hostile environment in Knoxville there, and playing his first true road game, going against an offense that can score, it's going to be pretty reliant on his defense. I don't trust it as much as I would trust it if Bryce Young was playing in this game, and I think the numbers really show that as well. So I will take UT plus 7 in this game. I like the push option at a touchdown. I think it's going to be close. I think with Nick Saban, I definitely won't put it past Alabama to be able to win this game outright. But I also wouldn't be surprised if UT can get out with a win, just with all the narratives in their favor. So I will take the points in this just for that added cushion, but UT could definitely pull it out at a money line number as well. Oklahoma State TCU. This one, it's offense, 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 and pretty much no defense. So a lot of similar numbers. TCU has the advantage in total offense, but Oklahoma State number 4 in scoring offense, TCU number 3. Very similar scoring defenses, total defenses. They're not good. So I think this one's going to be a really high scoring game. Oklahoma State has looked pretty good so far this year. I think they've definitely have their flaws, and a lot of those flaws obviously rely on the defensive side of the ball there. Um, I don't feel good. I think the line's TCU -3.5 just because they're playing at home. I don't love it. I don't love either team really on either side of that. I think if it got maybe to 2.5, then I'd probably take TCU just with that home field advantage, but I don't love it. So instead of going money line, instead of going against the spread, I feel pretty confident in over 68.5. I think this one could end up being a 48-45, maybe even into the 50s, just with how solid these offenses have looked so far this year versus the opposing defenses, and the fact that they haven't been able to stop a nosebleed, let alone an opposing offense. So take the over 68.5. NC State and Syracuse. This one just weird. I mean, anytime you're looking at Syracuse, kind of similar to if I was going to look at Kansas, right? I don't look at Syracuse and think of football, and so it's weird to me to see a one ranked Syracuse team also being favored against an NC State team that was thought to win the ACC this year, or potentially win the ACC, or at least compete with Clemson for the ACC title. And you've got 15th ranked NC State, 18th ranked Syracuse in this. They're favored by 3.5 at home. Um, I again kind of similar to the last game. I don't really love the spread in this one at -3.5, maybe -2.5. I could see it. Really, for me, this one is probably more of a pick 'em. I think the teams match up really well. Obviously, when you look at the numbers, there's some Syracuse has the advantage in every category, but a lot of the main ones, total defense, scoring defense, scoring offense, they're pretty close. I just don't know that NC State on the road is going to be able to stay with them the entire game, and I think Syracuse will have that advantage. I like them on the money line as opposed to the -3.5 here. Um, like I said, it's to me this is more of a pick 'em, and I think a lot of the country would agree. So go money line on this one and take the money to the bank. Mississippi State and Kentucky. Again, not something I think Kentucky's looked really pedestrian of late. They started the year really, looking really well with Will Levis. And we all obviously know what Will Levis is capable of and what his expectations are come April. But they haven't lived up to that expectation. Mississippi State has impressed. They have the fifth ranked strength of schedule, and they've put up a lot of really solid numbers. I think their only loss came to LSU, maybe week 2, and it was a 2 possession game. It wasn't really that close, but they've definitely performed well against some tough competition this year. At -3.5, I think that's probably a little bit under what they would actually come away with. I think Kentucky's getting a lot of credit for that for Will Levis and just being at home, and I think Mississippi State is probably going to run away with this one. I don't really see this one as being too terribly close. I think they'll win by maybe 10 to 14, somewhere in that range. So I will gladly take Mississippi State -3.5, and then USC and Utah, and this is the last game that we'll break down here with the numbers. But USC Utah, this one, the more I look at it, I just don't understand it. Utah is currently a 3.5 point favorite against USC at home. And I don't know if it's maybe just because they're at home and that's what is swaying the numbers in that way. But when you look at it, I mean, aside from the defense, total defense, really USC has the advantage in every category. Um, I think Utah is very well coached. Obviously playing them in the Rose Bowl, they definitely played a lot better than I expected them to, and especially from the offensive side. And so, I don't necessarily think you can count them out. They've lost some close games to Florida early on. They lost to UCLA. USC's or undefeated, but they've definitely played some pedestrian games and and probably should have lost one at least. I think it was the Oregon State game that they barely won that one. I mean, I think this would probably be, somewhere in the, I don't know, 28 to 24 kind of range. Um, I don't know that USC will win this game. I think they will. I mean, again, the more I look at the numbers, like I would think USC is going to run away with it. But the fact that Utah is favored leads me to think Vegas knows something, which just makes me second guess myself. But the more I look at it, the more I like USC plus the 3.5. I think it gives you a lot of cushion. I love the field goal cushion there to keep it within that. I think it is going to be a game that's pretty close in that range, maybe 34-31 or 31-28, something like that. And I think it could be a situation where Utah gets a late field goal to win the game. So I'm going to take USC plus 3.5. I'm going to go with my gut on this one and stick with that. And some other notable games: Clemson minus 3.5 at Florida State. I definitely think Florida State has looked better than what we've seen them look in previous years, or what we've come to understand them as in the previous years. And Clemson is Clemson. I think they're a solid team. Do I know that they're a college football playoff team? Not yet. I think there's still something to see there. They haven't really shown me anything that makes me think they should be ranked above, say, a Michigan or a Tennessee or even in Oklahoma State in that way. So I think when you look at the numbers, Clemson has the clear advantage in a lot of ways. Florida State has the offensive advantage, and they are at home in this game. But I will take Clemson minus 3.5. I think Florida State is on the way to being able to compete with the Clemsons of the world in the top of the ACC. I just don't think they're there quite yet. And then next, we will go to Kansas plus 8.5 at OU. A lot of this is going to depend on whether Daniels can play for Kansas. All reports are kind of looking like he's not going to be able to suit up. So they will be going with backup. But OU's defense is atrocious. They've been giving it points left and right. I mean, they've lost three in a row, and part of me doesn't understand how that's happened, how we came too far, or how they've dropped off as far as they have, I guess, especially with a defensive coach in Brent Venables now. So uh, they played. They're going to be mad. Let's put it that way. I mean, losing 49-0 in the Red River rivalry is never something that you're happy about. But I'm sure they weren't happy during that game either, and it didn't help. So I don't know that it's going to help much against Kansas. Kansas has looked offensively pretty solid all year. They'll be able to put points up against OU with or without Daniels, in my opinion. Do they keep it? Are they able to compete for 60 minutes? Maybe not. I mean, the talent gap is going to be the widest that they've faced so far this year. And I think that is definitely a factor that should be considered. But Kansas has shown in previous years they can compete with those teams, the Texases of the world, um, pretty well. And I think that they will be able to compete with OU. OU may still come out with the victory in this one, but I do like Kansas plus 8.5. Ole Miss minus 14.5 versus Auburn. Auburn, not very good. We saw what Penn State can do to them, and if Penn State can do that to them, then I have no reason to think that Ole Miss, ranked number 9, is unable to do that. I think Ole Miss, from an offensive perspective, has obviously the clear advantage there. Surprisingly enough, the defensive advantage is also in favor of Ole Miss in this game. I believe they have, what is it right now, the number 31 total defense versus Auburn 57. Um, so I like Ole Miss to win this game, and I don't think it's going to be too terribly close. I think the line is probably pretty spot on, but I will take the minus 14.5 in this one at home against an Auburn team that is really struggling right now. And then the last one here, Big Ten matchup: Minnesota at number 24 Illinois. Illinois ranked for the first time this year. Minnesota, um, I think will Minnesota is my favorite right now to win the West. I think they've got a really well-rounded team, and their ability to run the ball is one of the top in the country. I believe right now it is what, number six? Yeah, number six in rushing offense. So I think they'll be able to run it pretty solidly against Illinois all day long. Um, I think the defenses in this one, contrary to the Oklahoma State TCU game, is going to be what showcases this. You got the number one total defense and the number three total defense, and the number two scoring offense or scoring defense and number one scoring defense in this game. So I like the under here, 39.5. I could see this one being maybe a 21-14, maybe a 21-17, somewhere in that range, even 17-14 potentially. So I think it's going to be really low scoring. I don't really see it getting above that number. So I'm gladly taking 39.5. And if I had to put a money line favorite, I would probably go ahead and take Minnesota at the money line, though it is a -6.5. I don't love it. If it was 7.5, maybe 7, I'd probably take Illinois plus the points, but I will take Minnesota at the money line under 39.5. And that is going to do it for us here today at the Morning Scoop. If you agree or disagree with my picks for this weekend's games, be sure to leave those in the comments below and let me know where you're putting your money this weekend. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Be sure to search the Morning Scoop wherever you listen to podcasts for more episodes, both previous and to keep up to date with next week as we start to look ahead towards Iowa. And be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well for additional content that you can't find anywhere else. Of course, everything that is available for Buckeye Scoop is available at buckeyescoop.com, including our Ask the Insiders board, where you'll be able to join the community of Buckeye fans on the premier site for Ohio State news and information. As always, I'm your host, Ryan McClincy. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.